President Mbeki, the leadership and organizing team of ORF and Thabo Mbeki Foundation, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to all of you. Let me just first start by expressing my gratitude to ORF and Thabo Mbeki Foundation for giving me this opportunity. Sovereign credit ratings are more than just a manifestation of a country's credit risk. In fact, they move on beyond that in terms of their influence on the international community, influencing the investment decisions, the capital flows, and the economic policies. As Walter Wriston, the former CEO of Citibank, had once said, capital goes where it is welcome and it stays where it is well treated. In a lighter vein, I would also say that in fact capital goes from where it gets repaid and also repaid with some interest. But the key aspect is that the role of ratings in the economic development of any continent, any country, cannot be overemphasized. Colonialism, in its traditional terms, may have ended in most part of the world. But when it comes to the ratings of the emerging economies, there are growing concerns in terms of perceived biases. The thing is, imagine a country brimming with potential, a young dynamic workforce, growing industries, but it faces significantly high borrowing costs. And just because the rating is in the sub-investment grade, or for that matter, not up to the mark as far as the investors' expectations could be. So from that angle, ratings have become, if I were to put it very responsibly, it is the access to the lifeblood of the economic growth, and which is capital. Yet for the countries in the global south, these ratings are often mirrored in terms of certain perceptions and hiding behind subjective parameters. My thesis today is very simple yet profound, and that is addressing the credit bias and ensuring that there is an equitable global capital development. Ratings are like the report cards of the countries. It influences their ability to borrow and to invest. But from that angle, it gets manifested in more ways than one as far as the economic and the social development in any country is concerned. The World Bank emphasizes that it is not just these absolute sovereign ratings which are critical, but it is also how a country fares vis-a-vis its peer countries. So that means in relative terms also the ratings are very important. Especially in the aftermath of the global financial crisis, this aspect has become increasingly important. So the point is, not only are the global push factors important, but it is also a country-specific pull factor in relation to its peer countries, which determines the capital flow. A recent study by UNDP found that the African countries could have saved almost up to $74 billion if credit ratings were based on less subjective criteria. This amount could have been redirected towards the critical investments in human capital, infrastructure, and economic resilience. This not only amplifies the cost of borrowing, but locks these nations out of the global capital markets altogether. The consequences of this system extend far beyond the financial realm and create a vicious cycle in the form of stifled development, disproportionate penalties for external shocks, and reduced global investment. The consequences of this go beyond economics. They impact the social stability, even the sovereignty, and the hopes of millions who are striving for a better future. A very important element of this analysis is also that as we move down the rating scale from investment grade to the sub-investment grade, and especially in the sub-investment grades, where most of the African countries they find themselves, the African sovereign debt issues, they have found to be having higher spreads, even as compared to similar rated countries elsewhere. And there are two aspects to it. One is not only is the spread higher, but also the tenor of the sovereign debt is shorter. This creates a possible increased credit risk for them. And this is in stark contrast to the corporate debt issuances from these countries. So what it gets reflected is that the global investors potentially could be putting the corporate investors at a slightly higher pedestal even as compared to the sovereigns themselves. There is a need because of this for reworking the system. At CareEdge, we have recently entered the sovereign rating space with a pedigree of more than 3 decades in India as a domestic rating agency. We recently launched our global scale ratings. We are also poised to start our operations in South Africa. We already have a base in Mauritius. In South Africa, we have got the license. And the 39 economies that we have rated manifest the key aspects of a differentiated assessment. Our approach, it moves away from the traditional ones by addressing on the following aspects. The first is objective analysis with a greater weightage which has been given to the quantitative parameters which can be better understood, because we firmly believe that not only the assessor, but the assessee should also know how the assessment is being done. So we have given greater weightage on these aspects. There is a transparent scoring mechanism which we have put in the public domain so that the assessors and the assessees, both of them, they should be knowing how the weightages are being arrived at. And it reflects the much needed standards of evaluation where the changes have been made, including we factor in the investment needs of the emerging economies in the form of the gross fixed capital formation as a percentage of GDP. We have factored in very explicitly the sustainability parameters. We have factored in the extent of domestic funding by these countries and the past track record of tackling black swan events, just like we had the COVID pandemic. So by eliminating unnecessary subjectivity and the systemic biases, we have aimed to create a level playing field. And when we released the outcomes of the 39 economies, there is more than 50% divergence as against the rating agencies based out of West. And mind well, these divergences are both on the positive as well as the negative side. It's not as if all the ratings are higher. They are on the lower side also. And what we have seen after that is that, consequent to this ratings being in the public domain, we have seen certain actions coming from these rating agencies which are directionally aligned to our rating, and we welcome that. So from that angle, as far as the African countries are concerned, I present few points which could be considered. The first and the foremost thing is that there should be a regional rating scale. We have signed an MOU with the African Peer Review Mechanism, which is an organ of the African Union, for establishment of a pan-African credit rating agency, which should be the first of its kind initiative globally. This shall ensure that there is a more spread out distribution of the ratings, especially on the lower side, in stark contrast to the significant bunching which is seen currently. The second aspect is a robust domestic coverage of the ratings, which provides better understanding of the various credits within a country so that informed decision making as far as the global capital flow in that country can happen. The third is improvement in data quality and the frequency of publishing this data. This is extremely important. The next is a very proactive communication with the stakeholders and the rating agencies. There should be a single point of contact in each country to deal with the rating agencies. There should be unified responses from the monetary and the fiscal decision makers, and reaching out to the investors, the rating agencies, and the lenders in the form of a unified dissemination. The next aspect is in terms of enhancing the rigor and the quality of the inter-African regulations. And the last is investing the borrowed funds for the intended purposes only. This is where rating agencies, they tend to focus. And I strongly urge the convergence of the thought processes. This is something which I presented last month in the 9th meeting of the experts of ratings convened by the APRM as a part of AU in Cairo. And there was a lot of convergence on these thought processes. So the point of action, we are proud at CareEdge to lead this change, championing a future where ratings are going to be the instruments of empowerment and not barriers to progress. But this step taken by CareEdge is just the beginning. As we rework the ratings, let us remember, fair ratings are not merely numbers. They are tools to unlock opportunities. They are tools to enable the growth and improve the lives. Together, we can build a world where credit empowers rather than excludes. Let us work together to rewrite these rules and narrative of the global development. To close, I would like to quote our Prime Minister Modi. The world is interconnected, and progress for one is progress for all. I wish ORF and Thabo Mbeki Foundation greater success in the years to come, and once again thank them for this opportunity given to me. Thank you so much.